What's going on YouTube? What's happening, Mo? So it's your boy DameSmiff, and today we're gonna pretty much react to a very interesting conversation I've seen between a few people, but really we're gonna focus on the older black men. And the reason I'm choosing to focus on that perspective in the conversation because it is about black culture. But before we get into that and deep dive into my perspective, why I'm even reacting to this, and my opinion on the overarching topic, I want to know if you like this kind of content. And you can tell me that by hitting the like button. And also, if you hit the subscribe button, you'll be able to catch my latest videos or live streams like this. So let's get right into it because this is YouTube and your attention span is about 10 minutes long. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to react to a very, very long video. But in actuality, this video is going to be pretty long and it is what it is, but we'll clip it up later. But the idea of what we're going to be doing is we're going to kind of have a meta conversation about a conversation between two older individuals that are of the black culture here in America. Now, this is going to be very, very cool and important to me because as a musician, I've gotten to see the wave of trends change from, let's say, like early 90s musicianship to early 2000s musicianship to what we have today with streaming and content creation. So there is a big disparaging, I guess you can say, difference in perspectives on how to navigate these trends, especially as a musician, especially as a black musician. So what we'll kind of explore is a bit of what I learned through my musical journey, and then also we will be putting that against a lot of the perspectives that I had to grow up within my own culture here in America. So this is going to be a very, very eye-opening conversation and discussion for people who are not in the black culture, but this will also be an eye-opening discussion for people who are young black people in the culture, because you will then have the option to kind of choose which perspective you agree with or maybe you disagree with. And so, with that being said, I would kind of give you context of the overarching conversation we're going to be discussing, but then at the same time, I will give you a bit of my opinion. And then as the conversation progresses, I'll stop the video and then kind of give my opinion as they're continuing to either debate or have a conversation. So, what you will notice is in the topic they're discussing is, well, they're actually talking about one YouTuber and they're tagged in the title here, Anton Daniels. And the title is Anton Daniels Sold Out Black America. So, a few things pop into my head when I read Sold Black America Out. One thing is you have to own something to sell it. And then two, when you say Black America, that means there is a different America that you believe exists. And so, a little bit of my background, I'm actually a military brat. My parents were pretty much Air Force, and a lot of the things that they taught me had little to do with race and more so to do with nationality. Okay, so like learning the Pledge of Allegiance, understanding our veteran sacrifice, and also the civilian's purpose for fulfilling the duties of being a righteous civilian, whatever religion or race you come from or gender, right? But that's kind of how the most of my principles were brought up, between that and general um, Christian ideals that most Americans tend to have here, right? But what I started to realize as I got older was that people tend to look for differences, right? And not unique differences like the ones they tell you in middle school that are like fun, like, oh, this person's eyes are green and this person's eyes are brown. No, we look for differences in like belief systems and principles. And a lot of those differences have very little to do with one another. Like the idea that the women in your culture should wear hijabs and then the women in this other culture don't have to. Like that's a difference between the two different cultures, but there's really no effect between the two unless they force each other to cooperate or interact in that way. So when it comes to, at least for musicians, making music, there's no reason to look for these differences. When it comes to conducting business, there's no reason to look for these differences outside of fulfilling the results that you want. So for example, I would never hire a Latin drummer to play in my hip hop band unless that is the point, unless I really want a Latin drummer to play in this hip hop band, right? But I wouldn't do that simply because they're Latin or a drummer. I would simply do that based on whatever they can deliver for what I'm asking for. You see how that works? So when I learned that as a young man and then began to grow up, I started to see that there are people that don't agree with that. There are people that believe that because, in my example, the drummer is Latin, they should never be offered the opportunity to work with others that are, let's say, white or another nationality of Hispanic, right? And so once I learned that, I kind of had to navigate, okay, so then how do people that disagree with the idea of removing race and things like that, how do they navigate the world in order to get success without cooperating with those people? And so that's kind of where I'm at now, where I'm tending to look at people for the value they bring, obviously to me, but to the greater world. Like, for example, if you're a black man, white man, Chinese man, Arab man, how you view women will affect how I view all of you. It doesn't matter your race. If you took that same group of men and you gave them a driving test, if all of those men failed the driving test, it wouldn't matter to me their race, right? So what then I started to pay attention to was like, okay, the complaints I have of the world, like let's say I feel like I want more money or a better job or maybe a bigger house or something like that. I can find someone anywhere in the world that looks like me, possibly even at my age or younger, that has the thing I want. So if I can do that, or if I believe I can do that rather, because let's say I can't find somebody, but let's say I believe I can do that. The mindset going into the world will be that of positivity more so than negativity because you wouldn't have a reason to doubt the possibilities of what you desire. So, on the other hand, there are people who believe that because they're a woman, because they're broke, or because they were born in a location, or because they have a certain skin tone or a certain uh, complexion of skin tone, They believe in their heart that there is nothing they can do to change the environment around them. And so their perspective of the world, when they go out and see challenges of other people that look like them and see the successes of people that don't look like them, it starts to feel a little bit offensive, trying to solve in your mind why the world works the way it does. So the reason this is going to be an important conversation for young black people, and if you remove black, just young people in general, because this is a mindset that can actually transcend any race. I've seen this done with Asian people where they feel as though the stereotypes laid upon their culture are just nothing they can change. There's nothing, they just doomed to fulfill those stereotypes. I've seen it with white people. I've seen it with black people. I've seen it gendered where men and women do the same things. So in my opinion, it's a mindset of what we're about to witness. We're about to witness polarizing mindsets really come to a head and discuss something that doesn't really matter, but I really want to shape the perspective of being able to understand this mindset. Because as a young musician, you could be told something like, why would you become a musician? You're going to be a starving artist. There's no success in it. Why not get a real job, right? Whereas in the other instance, you could probably find a person that's doing exactly what you want to do as a musician, and they're good at it, and they're successful, and they're happy doing it. So we're just going to take a look at this, and that's pretty much my little monologue going into this. It's nothing too crazy as far as the overarching conversation. It's very, I guess you could say cordial, pretty respectful, but there is going to be points where I'm going to point it out where you're going to see parts of the conversation kind of lack intellect because they're more so reacting to what someone said instead of understanding what someone said. So let's go ahead and pull it up. So this is actually coming from the channel Dogface TV Podcast 2. And I actually never heard of this channel, but I popped onto it because this actually was made, or this live stream happened probably a week or so ago, probably longer than that because it's maybe a clip. But the overarching conversation for them was just about black culture, and then they invited Anton onto the stream so that way Anton can have the discussion about what they may have said about him and what they're saying about the topic as well. And what we will get into, like I said, is we're going to be discussing a lot of how they're having the conversation, not necessarily what they're having the conversation about, because the overarching conversation is about politics, and we don't really care about that right now because it's in the past. But how they're having this conversation is going to be the more important thing to pay attention to, because you will then see a bit of yourself and maybe others you've had conversations with in this. So let's get started.
So it's cool. I ain't tripping about none of that shit. It's
But
that's
my
something
question is
cool.
why?
Also, I've sped it up a little bit because we don't want to spend all our time watching this. And like I said, I'll be pausing throughout.
But we can kick it about Charlie Kirk. We can talk about
But you
that.
don't feel like that you're going against your own culture?
I don't. I think that the culture went against us for a long time. I think that everything that we celebrate about this culture has been toxic for us. And it's
Yes.
kept us in jail, it's kept us incarcerated. If you look at the full context, like for example, y'all use
So before we go forward, when they say the culture, I know some people may not be black. So what he means is not American culture. He means black American culture. And a lot of times I'll have conversations with people and they'll say, what is black culture? Black culture is black American culture. It's just black people in America, just like you have Latin people in America living their way, right? The issue that kind of blurs the lines between people is that, particularly this woman, let's say she identifies as black. This woman wouldn't identify with what the world would identify as black. Because what I'm learning is she considers herself black because possibly she's from or born in America and raised with darker skin African, melanin, right? The issue that she's going to run into is that when you leave this country, the word black means nothing. You're going to either be from your nation, which is American, or you're going to be of your, I guess you can say, yeah, just your nation, really. That's all it is, your ethnicity. That's what I was about to say. And so the issue that she's running into is that when she says going against your culture, she's cherishing something that she may not fully understand, just based on this short bit of conversation I've seen right now. Because the idea that what Anton just said was the things in our culture have held us back. She agreed in real time. We'll go back. She said, which means she does understand there are existing problems in the culture she participates in. The criticism that he has comes from literally addressing those problems, but she's asking, do you think doing that goes against your culture, which means upholding your culture? Now, before I press play, this does bring me back to another video we reacted to with Nick Shirley, where he was in the hoods of Chicago, and he asked a literal gun violence victim, would you want the gun violence to end? And that man told Nick Shirley, no, I want it to continue. So when we say going against our culture, that may be what she means. That may, because she lacks the understanding to say that here's a problem, solve it. She's saying as here's something that happens so commonly, fixing it would mean changing culture as I understand it today.
That you're going against your own culture?
I don't. I think that the culture went against us for a long time. I think that everything that we celebrate about this culture has been toxic for us and has
Yes.
kept us.
She said, yeah, everything we celebrated in this culture has been toxic for us. And she said, yes. After asking, does addressing this go against said culture?
In jail, it's kept us incarcerated. If you look at the full context, like for example, y'all used a talking point that is often used online about what Charlie Kirk said about empathy, right?
Mhm.
But if you look at the full video, and this is why you can't take clips alone, you got to look at the full context. He said, I don't believe in empathy, but I would replace it with sympathy. That's the actual quote of what he said. That was the full context. So liberals, Democrats, they take that and they run with it because they chop it up in order to try to validate their point. And this is how they manipulate the community. Continue. If you look at everything Democratic, because we often at times expect people to automatically vote blue and vote Democrat regardless of where they come from, what their socioeconomic status is. If you black, you vote Democrat, right?
So I'll pause here because he did mention a few different things, but there is a kind of point where you have to kind of audit what you believe to kind of challenge it, especially if you decide, at least in the United States, you want to cooperate with other cultures and races. You got to kind of see what the differences are so that way you can correctly disagree with them, right? And so I'm not too up on the whole misquoting Charlie Kirk thing because I wasn't really aware of some quote that made him so controversial, but the idea of chopping up information to get the point across that you believe is the actual point is not something that's special to any specific culture or specific race. Almost everybody I've seen do that around the world. But again, we're having a conversation about the mindset of a person that would do that. Why would you chop up any information and remove the context in order to make an argument? Why would you do that if you truly wanted clarity?
Black women voted Democrat at a 92% clip. Black men, 78%. We don't even ask ourselves why. Ain't none of what they do aligning with our culture. If you can find me one clip, one entire live stream in its full context, where Charlie Kirk went off against black people, when he like I'll give you another example. A lot of people like to take the talking point of what he said about the pilot situation. If I see a black woman as a pilot on American Airlines, I'm automatically going to start to question. Well, the reason why that was, he wasn't talking about black people specifically. He was talking about American Airlines having a program to where they started to push out people that was qualified for the job, but instead they started to recruit just based off of blackness and the fact that you're a woman.
So that brings a lot of clarity to what, at least what I believed before about that conversation. So I actually had a conversation before with an actual government worker, and they were talking about these DEI programs, and they were actually making the point that it makes way more sense to hire people based on their merit than it does for, like, any of these like citizen type, I guess you can say, titles where, like, black, woman, minority, foreign, and stuff like that. Doesn't really make sense. And so when we think about doing all those kinds of changes when it comes to like corporations and jobs and things like that, it starts to feel like you're choosing to go against what they will believe is their own culture of black first or Asian first or woman first or even America first. Like even things like that can kind of exacerbate the ideas of okay, we need to remove the things that you care about in order to get success.
So the majority of things that you can use for diversity, equity, and inclusion was one of the reasons why American Airlines started to recruit pilots, and then they had a problem with one of their planes, and it just so happened to be one of us to be at the helm of it. So what he was using as a talking point is you can't by default trust American Airlines because they're qualifying people based off of their looks and their gender, not necessarily whether or not they're the best for the plane.
Okay, so right there is where a lot of people are not going to stop, pause, and again, when we're having a conversation about a conversation, this is where you should take in what was said and understand it. So basically, what they're saying is if someone is choosing to perform or hire that way, using this process of, just because you are black or because you're disabled or something, you deserve the job, overlooking qualified people, the company doing that should be under scrutiny. And you should question the validity of their, I guess you could say, practices. But instead, we're looking at the results and thinking that what they're doing is correct, but there's some kind of magical, you know, discrimination going on.
So if you looked at the whole context of the conversation, he wasn't racist against it. What he was saying is that everything should be merit-based and it shouldn't be based off of your gender or it shouldn't be based off of your color.
Okay, so let me respond to that, brother. And once again, before I go into my diatribe, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Right? When you look at Charlie Kirk, and when you look at the things that he said,
Mhm.
if we're being specific, and I'm going to call him out. Charlie Kirk said his entire, and I'm emotional about this, but I'm just trying to put this aside. His entire spiel, he utilized words to isolate and to bring up some of the most obvious issues within the black race. He pointed out some of the things that it didn't take a rocket scientist to understand were issues inside of our community.
Mm-hmm.
And he harped on them. And he turned those points into dog whistle fodder.
Mm-hmm.
He played into the racist attitude and the racist concepts that people outside of our culture have about us.
I don't know how that goes directly against the point that he heard, but I'm assuming what he's pointing out is that when someone uses vocabulary that highlights the issues that are obvious and everyone understands, I'm guessing he's saying it agitates the people who hear it. And so you shouldn't talk about that, or maybe you should find another way to not agitate people to talk about the problems that they know exist.
When he spoke about Beyonce and her music being terrible, when he made reference to black pilots, and I heard what he said, he spoke about it more than just once. When he said, he made a point of trying to emphasize the part that it was all DIE, it was all basically affirmative action. And when he got on the airplane and he saw a black pilot, the first thing, a black pilot, he said more, he talked about it more than once. I heard him say that, and he said it in a jokingly offensive manner. He said, when I get on the airplane, I see a black pilot, I automatically start thinking, what are your credentials? How did you get here? Were you a DIE? Were you an affirmative action candidate? Are you actually qualified? As if the airlines, whose job it is, they're in the business of transporting people through the air, would somehow put the credibility or the safety of their company or the safety of their passengers at risk.
So right there should be where the debate lies. Not whether or not you believe the company is doing it. It should be whether or not the company is actually doing that. So I don't know if there's some DEI program for them, but if you know that there is, then you can have a conversation about that. But right now they're having, like we're doing, a conversation about the conversation.
By hiring somebody solely based on the color of their skin because they were black. And when he said that when he says, when I see somebody black, I automatically start thinking this and that. And I think about Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King said, and I'm not going to quote here, but he said, I'm looking forward to the day when black people are judged by the content of their character,
not the color of
their skin. What
right.
Charlie Kirk was proposing time and time again is that he was judging people based on a political process or based on a diversified process aimed to make the playground fair.
That's not what the aim was, Dogface.
But here's what I'm saying, bro. You gotta look at his presentation. His presentation was extremely aggressive, extremely offensive. When you spoke about
Dogface, how you way more offensive and aggressive than he is.
So I'm assuming again it's the delivery of the conversation, not necessarily the content, because the delivery of it could be given with like a bunch of curse words and torches. If the company is still doing that same thing, I don't think that would change much of anything other than how you feel about it. But that would then go into what you should do with said feelings.
are you serious?
Oh, absolutely.
I want to tell you that.
Dogface, you not no joke.
No, brother, I want it coming from you. That
And I am too.
that is a compliment. Listen.
Right. So when did we as men start mincing our words?
We'll just finish this point.
Okay, I'm
And
sorry.
I'm not going to. So my thing is that Charlie Kirk, he made a living. He rose to the level of fame that he had by pointing out everything that was wrong about Black people in Pacific.
So right there, he said he rose to fame pointing out what was wrong with the Black community. Vlad TV did this. DJ Academics did this. I'm trying to think of other content creators. There's a lot of people who do this specific thing. There's like police body cam channels. There's World Star Hip Hop. There's BET. There's Baller Alert. There's a lot of places that make money highlighting issues in certain cultures. And that's just ours. Like there's some for almost every culture. I think the issue that he's running into is that he has a problem with people doing that versus not being part of the thing that makes them money.
Right?
You're wrong. You're
Now,
wrong.
let me just get this off, bro.
Okay.
When you
I'm gonna write down some stuff you said.
yeah, let me get my pen too. Goddamn it, I ain't got no secretary around here. But listen,
Yeah, and he's not serious too. Like the pen joke was a good pen joke, but he really doesn't have a point to make the conversation progress. He just wants to finish speaking.
he talked about Beyonce's music. He talked about Martin Luther King. What he said about George Zimmerman, racist motherfucking ass. What he said about Trayvon Martin, the excuse, the justification, right? What he said about George Floyd and how he spoke about George Floyd's murder at the hand of law enforcement in the great state of Minnesota.
So honestly, right here, I have to pause it because he's kind of doing the same thing he doesn't like. Like he's exacerbating certain words in music. We call this accents. He's doing that so that way we feel a way about certain words because there's synonyms to a lot of the words he's using that could be a lot lighter for the conversation, a lot gentler, still meaning the same things, but he's choosing not to. Doesn't have to, but he's choosing not to do the very thing he doesn't like, which is to exacerbate points that are quite obvious to everybody.
So, George Floyd, what he said about him, you cannot expect Black people to listen to what he said. When you look at how Black people as a whole feel about how we're treated by law enforcement all over the world, but specifically in this country, he knew that was a hot button issue. He attacked that issue with vigor. He attacked it with no sympathy or empathy for the people who were more primarily affected by George Floyd's death. When he attacked Beyonce, when he attacked the legacy of the Martin Luther King, when he talked about LeBron James, right? There are too many times where Charlie Kirk used what I call, and what the whole world knows as dog whistling, to speak to his base, which were mainly white Anglo-Saxon Christian men.
So if I were to understand, I believe he's saying that the topics, terms, and vocabulary that he chose to focus on were dog whistles to the people that it didn't affect, thus creating talking points for them to, I guess, have a negative mindset of his own culture. Well, if we were to really think about it, at the beginning of this, he said those issues that were being highlighted were obvious and no one needed a rocket science degree to know about them. So I don't think they're dog whistles more so than just things that you know are true and already being highlighted.
AKA MAGA supporters. He did too much of that for my liking, bro, without any real justification.
So the majority of what Charlie Kirk spoke towards, that's what you chose to hear, right? Because I have a hard time believing that any of y'all actually was understanding what Charlie Kirk was about before he passed away. And the reason why I say that is because the majority of y'all talking points that y'all had the last time that y'all live stream was all the same stuff that everybody else was just repeating that everybody else was saying.
Because Anton, we don't have to reinvent.
Wait, Dogface, I thought you said you.
So that is a great point. I did a video one time on the Big Beautiful Bill. And the reason I did that was because I didn't know what it was. I had to open the bill and read it. And I did it with AI next to me so I could understand the things I was reading without, looking or sounding stupid. when you don't do that, how this is the point I'm making here about how you have conversations, especially older black men. If you are over the age of 20, how do you think you're going to be successful if you're not willing to deep dive into the information so that you fully understand what you're disagreeing with? Because it was just said that you don't understand the full context of the clips they're reacting to, and you need to watch the full thing. And the rebuttal was that I don't have time. So instead of either making time or finding a way so that way you can have the time or condense the information to be accurate yet fit your time schedule, you just don't do it. You don't get the correct information and then at the same time want to argue with misinformation.
Let me get my shit off.
But let me, I'm allow you, pardon me for the interruption, because what he gave the world, as it specifically, I'm talking about black people, I'm black. What he gave us was a bunch of
Accountability.
listen,
Was a bunch of accountability.
I don't know what he thinks was given to him if he doesn't understand the full context of what he's upset about.
Listen, there's nobody who understands, because if you watch some of my content,
I watch all your shit. I watch everything.
I'm really heavy on gangs in Detroit. I'm really heavy on these so-called community activist groups who are waiting for somebody to come with some magic pill to deal with all the negative shit that happens in our black community. Listen, you can't legislate.
Which is why
right now he's talking about something we're not discussing right now. We're trying to figure out, because he did make the interruption right here. We're trying to figure out why he has resistance to getting full context to clips and information he disagrees with. That's what we're really waiting on him to answer.
Surprised at you, dog face.
Why are you surprised?
I would think that you probably would be the leader at the forefront of actually championing the majority of the stuff that he would say.
And the reason he believes that he would be at the forefront is because if you get the full context of what he's disagreeing with, there is an actual push for making communities safer, reducing crime.
Oh, I'm gonna be honest with you. You don't listen. The only reason, because ain't nobody really told you about yourself. Like I'm gonna tell you about yourself. Because see, I'm the type of nigga that's gonna just tell you the truth. The only reason, dogface, that you are, as far as continuing to celebrate the bullshit that's within the community, while at the same time you straddle the line, dogface. You hot sometimes, you cold sometimes. Sometimes I wonder if either you Republican or you Democrat, because you call out the bullshit, but then continue to still support it by allowing for people to still stand in these spaces where they can be victims. When we know that most of the time, the majority of the shit that we go through is self-inflicted wounds.
And so right there is kind of where you will see a big difference between older black men today. So there are some black men that believe they went to jail or they committed a life of crime or they're broke or they're having struggles in life, and the life that they live because of that is justified. And then there's another sector of black men that believe that, okay, I'm broke or I went to jail or, maybe I've made a mistake and I'm doing bad, I'm struggling. I should do something different. So this is what he means by he's straddling the line. He's hot and cold. He's saying things like, I'm against gang violence. I don't like fake street activism, and I want real change in my community. But then on the other hand of his same conversation, he will not cooperate with people of a different race because they see the same issues that he sees in his community and they point it out.
Listen, the one thing about Charlie Kirk, and similar to myself, is that Charlie Kirk didn't dodge no smoke at all. He was willing to debate you. He was willing to meet. He was going college to campus. He was pulling up on people in real life. And the majority of who he spoke to wasn't even black people. It was liberal white women. It was liberal white women. That is the people that he held accountable the most.
Damn.
And so the thing about it is that the thing about us is that when we called up, see, when somebody say something to me and they say, Anton, I don't fuck with you, you're wrong, and so on and so forth, I'll be like, all right, I feel you. You know what? I respect that because I got thick skin and I don't live in an echo chamber. I'm not looking for everybody to agree with me. I'm trying to figure out what the right thing is. So even me sitting here talking to you right now, I don't disagree with some of the stuff that you're saying. I actually am taking that in. I'm going to sit on it. I'm going to sleep on that shit and I'm going to consider it. But see, the thing about most black people is if you're not massaging their ears and telling them what they want to hear, if you're not agreeing with them by default, they don't want to have a conversation. And that's the biggest problem. It wasn't that I agreed with 100% of what Charlie Kirk said, because I don't agree with 100% of what my own mother say, right? The problem is that, I don't advocate for nobody to die because they got their own opinion, regardless of whether I agree with them or not. I'm not going to celebrate somebody's death, right? I would rather you be here and me be able to debate you or talk back and forth with you if I disagree with you than to celebrating your death, because now I don't have nobody to spar with. I don't have nobody to try to convince, right?
Mhm.
But the second
And so that point right there is where the conversation about the DEI example kind of shines true or shines bright. Because if you had an interest in correcting your community, then that would mean that when someone points out an issue, you would want to do better. You would want to adjust it, right? But then at the same time, if someone points out that issue and it makes you angry, it's okay to be angry, but there should be an understanding that they are not simply the adversary. The issue you have is your adversary. So now you have a problem where there are a group of people in the world that think, things like violence or political violence is justified simply because of the overarching circumstances. And one of those circumstances is what Dogface highlighted earlier: agitation. If you use certain vocabulary, if you use certain sentiments and you don't look like the person that you're talking about, or if you don't experience the thing that you're speaking of, he's suggesting that there would be a bit of a justification to your agitation. It agitates you. Now, this is where they're going to probably play the middle line. What do you do with that agitation? Do you then self-reflect and change your behavior? Do you express it outwardly towards whoever you're talking to or your loved ones or people near you? This is where you're supposed to shape your culture and understand how to deal with the issues that are being highlighted, that Dogface himself said was obvious in his community, and pretty much Anton and everybody else on the panel agreed with. So what do you do when you're agitated by someone pointing out the issues in your community and also the solutions that you could use for your issues?
part is that we dodge accountability like the plague. If somebody say you fucked up, if somebody say, hey, listen, stop killing yourselves. If somebody say, hey, listen, because one of the biggest things that Charlie Kirk used to say about the Black community, and I'm surprised y'all ain't even mentioned this, is he would say, hey, listen, if y'all want to fix your community, the first thing you got to do is stop having single parent households.
Mhm.
If we don't want to talk about none of the shit that he said that's actually hitting us, we want to feel like victims. Motherfuckers in the hood talk harder than us and say wilder shit about us than Charlie Kirk ever did, but we get offended at that nigga.
So there's a great point here. And again, this is just the difference between older Black people. Older Black people have a controversy where there's the single parent home dynamic, right? And some of their reactions are agitation, right? But then also annoyance. And this is what he means by dodging accountability, meaning like, you ever been yelled at by your parents or your mom and you kind of don't want to hear her talk anymore? You will either do what she asked for or just ghost her. You're just not going to do what she says and be rebellious because you're agitated or you're annoyed or something like that. You're not willing. You're not open to being, a giving, subservient person at the moment, right? You're angry. So now you're seeing in real time, Black people, there's no white person here, explain the exact same issue that all of them say is obvious, which is, in their opinion, single family homes. Now you're seeing the agitation come up. But this is what I mean when we're having a conversation about a conversation. How do you think some of these people are going to deal with their agitation to the issue that was highlighted in their community that they already know exists? So let's see how they react and control their agitation.
But you said the right thing, Anton. The thing is, look at the messenger and how he was delivering it. See, you missing that part. I understand what you're saying.
Be worried about what the messenger look like.
No, this is what I'm saying. I understand.
So the first bit of agitation now, because the examples were gun violence, single parent homes, and overarching Black culture. And Juice on the bottom right says that you are correct, but we don't like the messenger. Look at the messenger. So this is another philosophical, or I guess you can say a difference in principles between the older men in our community. You can say something correct, but if I don't like who you are, what you are, or where you're from, the information you're saying is not valuable, even though I know it's correct, even though I am a grown adult and I can see the exact thing you're talking about.
No, I understand what you're saying about listening to his whole message. But who put him in our shoes to be able to give us a message about?
So now he's questioning the validity of the message because they haven't experienced it. So I'm only pausing here because he's like quickly pointing out a lot of differences I see between adult men in my community. So first, it's the messenger has to look like me, and then the messenger has to have my experiences. So if I was broke and got rich, then I can teach you how to get rich. But if I was never broke and always rich, I shouldn't be able to teach you unless he doesn't agree with that. And that logic is kind of like case by case.
What we should and shouldn't do.
Y'all not hearing this shit no matter what.
No,
I say it and y'all don't listen. If I say it, y'all don't want to hear shit about me. Y'all don't want to kick it with me. The first thing that y'all say is, look at this.
So
bitch
why
ass.
would we want to hear it from him?
For
Make
sure.
that make sense.
You don't want to hear
Why
it from
would we wanna hear
nobody.
from him?
No,
Hold on.
first, let me say something, Dollface. Let me
Go
say
ahead.
something. The reason why we don't, my thing is, it's a difference. It's a major difference of delivering a message. If you're just talking about all our fuck up is what's wrong with the black community and you have no solution, that's a problem.
He
You're
did
being
have a solution.
judgmental.
So Baby Doll on the upper right, she made a valid point, and maybe they'll have a rebuttal, but she was like, the issue is that there's no solutions provided. So it just feels like you're just criticizing to no point.
I don't want to hear a solution after the way he delivered. Like he says, most of the crime wasn't up until black people started, and more black people started
So
coming.
you
around.
sensitive is basically what you're saying.
You know, I
You
don't
don't want to hear it
what I'm saying is
because
a white motherfucker can't say shit about us because they ain't helping us. You can say
they
you
can say, they can say whatever the fuck they want to
He
say.
ain't
You can say,
helping us, but
you can
my
say what you
problem-
want.
Yeah.
You can say what you want to them, and they can say what they want to you.
And then, but when they was sad about it, you got a black man backing him. You a black man.
So aside, she made one good point, was that there's no solutions provided. And from her perspective, I was hoping somebody would give her one of the solutions that she's looking for. But since that hasn't happened yet, that's one for her. But the other thing is that her issue is the color of people's skin. I think that's the issue, because it seems, well, it may not, because she seems to just not want to talk about the actual issue that he presented, but she's suggesting that people's skin color plays a role in how she's going to receive the information.
I don't
You're
back
backing
people
them.
based off of the color of their skin. I back people whether or not I agree with
How
them.
dare you? To me, I'm gonna tell you like this right now, and I'm not gonna change the way you think, and I'm gonna change the way I think. Okay.
So we're not going to change the way she thinks, which means the next probably like 60 seconds of her talking is just so she can finish speaking, not so that she can actually understand anything.
At the end of the day, it's bullshit. What you speak is
Mhm.
bullshit. At the end of the day, I feel like that's you talking about black people. Yeah, we need to be motivated. They stole our identity from day one. Everything that these people out here doing and getting rich and being successful, that's something black people invented most of this shit. But at the end of the day, you're not giving us props. You going against us with this white man. I don't give a fuck if he was.
So in her mind, again, the issue is single parent homes right now. And she's saying you would be going against the black community because you're siding with someone who pointed out that issue of single parent homes, and they have a different color of skin.
Orange man. At the end of the
But who
day,
is us?
here's the help.
Who is us?
Black.
Baby
black
Doll, you
skin.
did hit him.
Listen. We the only culture of people that don't separate ourselves based off of the degenerate motherfuckers versus the people that's actually productive and doing what they're supposed to do.
That's a great point there too. In America, we have a degenerate culture, and then we have the, I guess you can say, general working class culture of, your teens that go to school and go home, college kids that are studying to get a job one day or get a career, and then you got parents, and then you got the elderly, right? Those people are pretty much just regular Americans. Then you got the Americans that are actually citizens, but at the same time, they just disregard authority. They don't like the general culture here. They go against common sense, right? And so what Anton is suggesting is that she and like many other people aren't separating herself from them. She's using the skin color and then joining all of them together. So then when someone comes along and says this behavior is bad or this result is bad, she feels as though you're criticizing her entire existence versus her character.
White people don't fuck with all white people. Asian people will separate themselves. I just got back from Japan last year, and it's a whole city that's dedicated to getting the motherfuckers out of here that's not doing the shit that they're supposed to do. Why do I have to support everything that black people do? Because I'm gonna tell you, I give out scholarships to black people. I employ them. See, I don't go by talking points. I go by real life. I employ the majority black women. I give out scholarships to my alma mater, Cass Tech. $25,000 every single year, $5,000, and I give them specifically to black boys. I be out in the streets passing out $5,000 every 2 weeks.
So I've never heard of any of this, but that's pretty crazy. But I'm trying to figure out how what has been stated just now is in competition with words and the things that agitate you. I'm trying to figure out how this, lines up with people. And this is what I mean by like older black people being able to set the example. Or for what I'm looking at, you have one person that's actually investing in the people and community, whether they're black or white. And then you have other people who dislike it and they haven't presented the said solutions they're looking for. Now, let's say what Anton's doing is not a solution. He's just throwing money at the problem, right? How can we tell if we refuse to do it? And then at the same time, we've had these conversations for years. These conversations have been happening since I believe the 60s. They've been talking about single parent homes in black communities. So the conversation has been going on for a long time. The problem hasn't changed. Very few people do a financial investment incentive into their communities, whether it's investing in safety, investing in education. And when you think about community activism, it's not about having conversations and understanding. It's about opportunity. And if you don't give opportunity, you're not activating your community. You're just talking to them. So there's one side of this where I personally couldn't give a bunch of money to my high school right now. Like I just can't afford it. But I would assume that within the right realm of thinking, communicating with the right people, regardless of their skin color, you can make money do a lot of great things for a community. Having a conversation with people that look like me, that have experienced the same issues as me, and that don't have the solutions to get out of the issues that I have are not going to help me get closer to that solution that I can't think of.
Two people in the streets handing it to their hands, not giving it to some bitch ass community organization. So I don't care about what people say. The real work is on the ground. And so my life is a reflection of it. I'm married to a black woman for the last 21 years, right? I'm advocate. I never left my city, even though I have the resources to be able to do so. And I'm always going to be a resident of Detroit. So I don't care about when people say you go against black people. Black people think that just because you say something and hold them accountable and say stop doing fuck shit, that automatically means that you going against them, or because you support something that somebody says that hold us accountable.
He's
that means that
stereotyping. He said all black people are one.
I go against black culture that continues to celebrate the things that keep us down. I don't go against black people. Black people.
So right here would be a very good point to kind of differentiate what in black culture holds black people back. And off the top of my head, the first issue would be the single parent home thing, because you would be putting a lot of stress on one person to raise a family. And so multiple households doing that, that's stressful, right? The next thing would be our education in our community, specifically the black community. Like, for example, I have a 4-year-old son, and he's damn near teaching himself so much because of the resources I'm laying in front of him. Now, when I have conversations with other parents, they talk as if they've seen children like so far behind in reading, education, social interactions with like people and things like that. And then as I've gotten older, I'm seeing my peers, my 30-year-old something peers, not being able to complete sentences at like the cash register. I'm seeing young women go into like career fields where they just have no kind of goal in mind. They just saw an interest and just jumped into it. I'm seeing young men have kids with like no intention to raise said kids. So there are a lot of issues that we can point out to where we can overarchingly just have the conversation on stopping that activity. But you can't really do that if, for example, you, as Dogface was saying, not Dogface, I'm sorry, as Juice was saying, if you haven't experienced these things, you can't talk about these things. If you don't look like me, you can't talk about these things. So like, I have never experienced going to jail, joining a gang, being in baby mama drama or anything like that. So for me to point this out probably would seem offensive to somebody who has gone to jail, who is a baby mama, and who does have, drug issues and things like that. But I would want it to stop. I would want that lifestyle that they have to stop and improve. Similar to the Nick Shirley example I was given earlier, like that person he was interviewing in that video was an actual gun violence victim. But in order for them to no longer be a victim, the gun violence would have to stop. And they didn't want it to stop. He literally asked him, would you want it to stop? And he said no. meaning that it would now solidify him perpetually, forever, as a victim of the thing that he wants to keep going. And it creates an identity for him. Because if you remove the gun violence in this example, you would just be a victim. You would just be a man in America shot. There's no cool thing. There's no overarching conversation to be had. There's no activism. There's nothing. There's just, you go to the hospital, you get better, and you avoid these situations the best you can. And so I think that's what we're having an overarching conversation about here. And I think this is pretty good for this video. If you want to check it out, I'll definitely link it below. But I think in general, this is the conversation a lot of older Black people are having. They struggle with the idea of solving for things that they have been embedded into their lifestyle. So whether it's gun violence, drug use, womenizing, promiscuous activities, all these kinds of things that common sense people would say, I will not participate in and I don't recommend for my friends. There's a bit of, when you say that, you now have to remove it or eradicate it. And then that means a lot of your friends, the cool things, the things you celebrate in your culture that hold you back, must cease to exist. So that's it for me. I think this is running way longer than I needed it to, but it's a great conversation because I get to kind of, give a little bit of what my mind goes to when I think of this stuff and give a pretty much an unbiased opinion, because I have friends from all kinds of races and all kinds of backgrounds and lifestyles and things like that. But I've only been able to maintain my own personal perspective because I do things like this. I just simply listen to people, have conversations, and create my own opinion of it. So if you enjoyed this was Musician Talks with your boy DameSmiff, and I will see y'all on the next one.